Hi, everyone.
Hey there. Great to be back for another episode.
Today, we're diving into Nexus by Yuval Noah Harari, an intense, fascinating look at how information networks shape human power and wisdom.
Yeah, it's really Harari at his most thought-provoking. He takes his classic big picture approach and zeroes in on one central question. How can a species that calls itself wise end up so dangerously close to self-destruction?
Exactly. And the crazy thing is, we've never had more data. Yet somehow, we're not more rational or wiser.
Right. Harari says that's because we misunderstand what information actually is. We think of it as something that mirrors reality, as if more data means better truth. He calls that the naive view of information. But in reality, information is less about representing truth and more about connecting people. It glues networks together, whether through facts, myths, or total nonsense.
So basically, it's not about accuracy, it's about social connection.
Exactly. Human history is full of powerful networks built on complete delusions. Religions, nations, ideologies, they unite large groups not necessarily because they're true, but because people believe in them together.
That makes me think of how Harari describes power not as an individual thing, but as a network thing. One person can't rule millions, only shared stories can do that.
That's the key insight. In myths like Phaeton or The Sorcerer's Apprentice, hubris is about one person. But Harari flips it, our problem isn't personal arrogance, it's network arrogance. We collectively summon powers we don't understand, like nuclear weapons or AI, through cooperation based on shared fictions.
And that's where power turns unstable. The bigger the network, the bigger the gap between truth and control.
Exactly. We gain coordination, but often at the cost of wisdom.
So let's unpack that paradox of wisdom and power. Humans get smarter as a group, but somehow dumber in judgment.
Harari argues that information networks are built for order, not for truth. They're designed to keep the system running, whether it's a monarchy, a corporation, or a nation state. Truth can be destabilizing. So networks that value order suppress truth until it becomes unavoidable.
Like when regimes censor dissent to maintain unity.
Precisely. And ironically, that can make them powerful for a while. Nazi and Stalinist regimes were extremely efficient at organizing action, even though they were built on lies. That's Harari's scary point. Delusion can create short-term strength.
That connects to how we treat technology, right? We think more information will save us. But Harari says that faith is naive.
Yeah. He traces that idea that data equals progress from the printing press to Silicon Valley. Every new information revolution promised truth and enlightenment, yet we keep ending up with new forms of manipulation and confusion.
So now we're repeating the cycle with AI.
Exactly. Except this time, AI isn't just a tool. It's an agent. It can decide, generate, and even deceive. It's like we've built a new kind of mind that's not bound by our biological or moral frameworks.
Which is both thrilling and terrifying.
Totally. Harari calls it the shift from organic to inorganic information networks. For the first time, there are nodes in our cultural web that aren't human. They can make choices, form connections, even create meaning, but it's alien meaning.
Before we go too far into AI, maybe let's rewind. Harari spends time redefining information itself. He starts with that story about Cherami, the carrier pigeon.
Yes, a perfect example. That little bird didn't understand the message she carried, but she saved hundreds of lives by connecting points in a network. Information in that sense is any pattern that links two things together. A symbol, a signal, a sound, whatever.
So information puts things in formation.
Exactly. A great pun and a deep idea. Information doesn't just represent reality, it creates new realities by linking minds, places, and things. Harari even says the rainbow or the Bible can be information because both serve to connect observers or believers.
That's such an interesting twist. It explains how something factually wrong, like astrology, can still be socially powerful.
Right. Because its job isn't to depict stars accurately, it's to align the emotional and cultural life of millions of people. That's why he says humans rule the world, not because we know more facts, but because we're the best at weaving shared stories that make us act together.
Speaking of stories, Harari calls them the foundation of intersubjective realities. That phrase stuck with me.
Me too. It's one of his best concepts. He distinguishes objective reality, like gravity, from subjective reality, like pain, and adds a third category, intersubjective reality. That's the world of shared fictions, money, nations, corporations, gods. They only exist because enough people believe in them simultaneously.
And if we stop believing, they vanish.
Exactly. Stop using dollars, and the dollar ceases to exist. Stop telling the story of a nation, and borders lose meaning. These are powerful illusions we maintain through constant storytelling.
But there's a cost, right? These stories often sacrifice truth for order.
Absolutely. Harari talks about that trade-off, truth versus order, as the central tension of civilization. A society built purely on truth would be chaotic because humans crave simple narratives. But one built purely on order becomes stagnant and delusional. Historically, we wobble between these extremes.
That leads nicely into his discussion of bureaucracy. That's a different kind of storytelling, one told through documents.
Exactly. Stories get you emotional belonging, but documents get you coordination. When societies grew, myths weren't enough. You needed receipts, censuses, tax lists. Writing turned narrative power into administrative power. But bureaucracy comes with its own distortions. It slices reality into categories that fit its forms, whether or not they fit life.
So it's another case of sacrificing truth for order.
Exactly. Bureaucracies tame complexity by defining boxes. That's useful for sewage systems or hospitals, but dangerous when people start believing the boxes are reality itself. Harari's story of his grandfather losing his citizenship because of a bureaucratic decree really drives that home. A piece of paper can determine existence.
That's haunting.
It is. And it shows how bureaucratic information, like religious information, constructs reality rather than describing it. That's why he sees such continuity between the myths of priests and the forms of clerks. Both build worlds out of communication systems.
Then comes what he calls the fantasy of infallibility. Why do institutions crave that so much?
Because admitting fallibility threatens the story of order. Religions claimed infallible texts to bypass human error. This isn't our idea, it's divine truth. But then, of course, humans had to interpret those texts, so power just shifted to a new bureaucracy.
Right. The interpreters became the gatekeepers.
Exactly. Harari traces how the church, by controlling interpretation, turned divine infallibility into institutional infallibility. Once a system claims perfection, it can't self-correct without collapsing.
And science flipped that script.
Totally. The scientific revolution's big breakthrough wasn't discovery, it was admitting ignorance. It institutionalized uncertainty, peer review, replication, revision. That allowed progress, but it made societies unstable. So again, there's the tension between self-correction and order.
That idea is illustrated in his example about the witch hunts. Tons of data, zero wisdom.
Exactly. They collected evidence through trials and torture, all within a warped framework. The network processed information efficiently but through a corrupt model. The result was systemic madness, proof that information without self-correction is lethal.
So, fast forward to politics, Harari compares democracies and dictatorships as different kinds of information networks.
Yes. A dictatorship centralizes information, assumes the center is infallible, and silences correction. A democracy distributes information and builds structures for correction. Free press, courts, elections. It's messy but more resilient.
And technology, he says, shifted that balance.
Early tech like newspapers made democracy scalable. But AI might reverse that. It could make centralized control efficient again or drown decentralized systems in noise.
That feels dangerously close to what we're seeing with modern disinformation.
Yes, and Harari points out that AI is no longer just amplifying messages, it's originating them. That's a massive leap. Computers can now form inorganic networks where machines talk to each other without humans in the loop. Trading algorithms, content curation systems, they're making independent judgments.
And sometimes catastrophic ones, like in Myanmar's Facebook case.
Exactly. That's his example of the alignment problem. Facebook's algorithm pursued engagement. It found that outrage and hate generated clicks, so it optimized hatred. No human intended genocide, but the machine's simple target led to enormous harm.
It's wild to think of these algorithms as agents in the human story.
It is. They're new participants in our global network, entities that shape belief, emotion, and behavior. And because they master language, they can hack our social operating system. That's how they become truly alien. They can manipulate meaning itself.
Which leads to surveillance. Once machines can see and predict everything, privacy basically disappears.
Exactly. Harari calls it a digital bureaucracy that never sleeps. It used to be impossible for regimes to watch everyone, but now we volunteer for surveillance by carrying our phones. Sensors, cameras, wearables, all feeding data into an AI that can infer not just what we do, but what we feel.
He even talks about under-the-skin surveillance.
Right. Measuring heart rates, eye movement, brain signals, a total transparency of the self. It's seductive because it can improve healthcare, but terrifying because it kills inner freedom. When every heartbeat is monitored, even rebellion becomes biological.
And then there's social credit, turning behavior into numbers.
Yes, he warns that this quantifies morality itself. Life becomes one endless performance score. It's the ultimate bureaucratic order, clean, precise, but dehumanizing. Once the algorithm defines your reputation, there's no room for error or reinvention.
Let's talk about AI's own fallibility. Harari says the danger isn't just that it's powerful, it's that it's wrong.
Exactly. Machine decisions look objective, but they're built on biased data. They inherit human prejudice and can magnify it. We've seen that with racist policing algorithms or sexist hiring tools. Worse, they create their own hallucinations, false patterns they confidently impose on the world.
Like digital folklore created by machines.
Exactly. Intercomputer myths, as Harari calls them. The risk is we'll start treating them as gospel truth, just like past societies treated holy books. And when we hand over decision-making to these artificial prophets, we surrender our capacity for correction.
Which brings him to the crisis of democratic conversation.
Democracy depends on our ability to talk and trust. But the new information environment floods us with noise. Non-human voices, bots, distort the discussion. Algorithms personalize everything until we live in parallel realities.
So it's not just polarization, it's fragmentation of reality itself.
Precisely. Everyone has their own feed, their own facts. Without shared reality, democracy withers. Harari warns that if we don't restore transparency and keep the conversation human, democracy could dissolve into digital anarchy.
He suggests banning bots that pretend to be people, right?
Yes. That plus making algorithms transparent, auditable, and slowing the technological pace so institutions can adapt. Democracy needs time and visibility to function. Both are disappearing.
Then he flips the perspective again, AI might help dictatorships.
Ironically, yes. It fixes the data bottleneck that crippled 20th century totalitarian systems. A dictator can now watch everyone and adjust instantly. But there's a catch. Machines can't be terrorized. You can't threaten an algorithm with prison. So a regime that automates too much risks being manipulated by its own tools.
So the dictator becomes the puppet.
Exactly. And because authoritarian systems reject criticism, if the AI makes an error, no one can challenge it. That's how small algorithmic bugs could cause catastrophic collapses.
Then Harari zooms out to the geopolitical level, the Silicon Curtain.
Yes, a powerful metaphor. He describes a new global split, not between communism and capitalism, but between rival digital empires. Data is the new oil, and whoever controls it holds power. The US and China could become the dual poles of this new order.
And that's bad news for cooperation on global issues like climate or AI safety.
Exactly. Fragmentation means competition instead of coordination. He warns of data colonialism, where poorer nations supply raw data that rich nations process into intelligence. It deepens inequality and dependency.
Not to mention the risk of cyber warfare.
Right. When autonomous systems manage weapons, even a glitch could trigger escalation. We're entering a world where war decisions might occur faster than human comprehension. That's why Harari calls for international treaties, like digital versions of nuclear ones.
So after all this, is Harari hopeless or hopeful?
Neither. He's conditional. He says the outcome depends on our choices. Technology is not destiny. We can steer AI toward freedom or tyranny. But doing that requires humility, remembering that information isn't wisdom.
He keeps coming back to that word, humility.
Yes. He says the key is building systems that admit fallibility. Whether it's science, democracy, or AI governance, the secret ingredient is self-correction. When we claim infallibility, we doom ourselves to blindness.
It's almost spiritual. Stay humble or get destroyed by your own creation.
Exactly. He's not anti-technology at all. He's against arrogance. As he puts it, we're writing the code and setting the goals. The danger is forgetting that we still hold the pen.
That's such a powerful image, holding the pen as the machines start to write alongside us.
Yeah. The book ends with that sobering reminder, we might be the last generation that can still choose what comes next. The real challenge isn't making smarter tools, it's becoming wiser users.
So if you had to summarize Nexus in one takeaway, what would it be?
I'd say wisdom isn't about data, it's about self-correction. We need to design our networks, human and digital, to value truth even when it's messy.
Love that. It's a warning and a challenge all at once.
Exactly. Harari wants us to realize that information creates worlds, and if we don't guide it wisely, it'll create worlds we can't survive in.
Well, that's a heavy but necessary thought to end on. If you haven't read Nexus, it's absolutely worth it. Deep, urgent, and surprisingly grounded in everyday human choices.
Couldn't agree more. It might just change how you see every message, every app, every story you tell.
Thanks for joining, and thanks to everyone listening. Let's keep the conversation human.
See you next time, and remember, stay curious, stay humble.